How's it going, everybody? Welcome back to another Emerald City Hockey post-game live. They're up, they're down. The Kraken fall 5-2 to the Minnesota Wild. An inverse of last game, right, Afra? I know. Oh my gosh, everybody. Just consistency. Consistency would be great. It would be really great, wouldn't it? I don't even really know where to begin with this one. I mean, there was discipline issues, there was defensive issues, those came back. I mean, so much of what made last game look so good for the Kraken, right? Whether it was their offensive strategies, their power play strategies, the way they defended, the goaltending, just all of it wasn't there. It just wasn't there tonight. And a game that you needed it to be there because this was going to be a big 4-point swing game. We knew this coming in. And I mean, they just didn't have it. Is the bottom line. They just weren't there. And unfortunately, with the exception of St. Louis, all the other teams in the wild card race won tonight. So it just makes it even worse. Kraken now 5 points back of that second wild card spot. So things are gonna get tough. There's still time. They can still do this. Boston, we know they play well against Boston. Pittsburgh, you maybe pull off something there. They haven't been that great this year. But Kraken, I mean, it feels like every couple post games I got to come on here and say this, but Kraken got to win. They got to start winning. They really, really do. And you just got to do it consistently. Want to take a moment before I get into the comment section, though, to, of course, thank our sponsor, Flat Stick Pub, for sponsoring this post game, as well as all the post games. And, after a game like tonight, probably a good idea to remind everybody, if you were at that Kraken game, I know a lot of people watch as they leave, as they're on their way home. You can go to that South Lake Union location for Flat Stick Pub and get $1 off beer after the game. You just show your ticket to take advantage of that special there. And a game like this might be worth it. Just saying, might be a good idea for some folks. Gonna start off the comment section here with Seth with the super chat. Thank you very much, Seth. Appreciate that. Ebbs scored. Yes, Ebbs did score. He's staying hot. I mean, look, for a guy who keeps insisting he doesn't want to get traded at the trade deadline, as his name is floating around national rumors with the Rangers, scouting him and all that stuff, supposedly, right? For a guy who doesn't want to be traded, boy, is he sure heating up right in front of the trade deadline, right? But really, I think a lot of this is just, it's basically regression, right? I mean, he's struggled through a lot of this year. He's kind of just, been unlucky in a lot of ways. And so it's nice for him to kind of just get back to the Ebbs that we know and love. And he's getting on the scoreboard and he's getting help. He's getting bounces. I mean, his goal tonight, he's back up against the wall below the goal line, throws it in front, goes off the Wild defender. Flower can't really handle it. He ends up kind of knocking it in with his elbow. So yeah, that's the way good goal scorers are, though. They get those bounces and they're able to be successful. So good on Ebbs for sure, Seth. And then Schultz with the super chat. Where did our special teams go? I don't know. So much of what made the power play work against Vancouver wasn't really there for this one. There was lots of player movement against Vancouver, a lot less in this one. I saw what Allison was talking about with the kind of like pseudo umbrella kind of that they were going for at times, because they weren't even really super committed to that. But what was interesting about it, we'll have an early appearance of the whiteboard. Why don't we for this real quick? So what was interesting was that it wasn't like totally a traditional umbrella, and that kind of confused me a little bit. So I was trying to figure out what they were going for. But one of the way a traditional umbrella would look, as I get the whiteboard up and ready to go here. So a traditional umbrella would look something like this, and the idea is like you've got the handle of the umbrella, the stick part, and then it just kind of fans out on the top. I gotta get used to working backwards and mirrored here on the screen. So that's like what a traditional umbrella setup looks like. It's similar to just the generic 1-3-1 that like everybody runs these days. It's just you'd have those guys more dropped down in line with the bumper spot in the middle. What the Kraken did, though, was they have the guys play up high, and then they were just having these two players down there. So instead, it kind of looks something like this. Now, I get where she's coming from with the umbrella, because the umbrella is the only time you'd have three players up high in the zone on a power play, because it's not the greatest place for them to be, but it's the unit that has Oliver Bjorkstrand on one side and Jared McCann on the other. And we know that those are both players that like to play up high on the power play. So I can kind of see them going with this. And then they were getting guys ready for rebounds or passes at the side of the net. It's a different look. I still like the fact that it's a different look, but not a ton of player movement here. And I don't know. It didn't seem that great. The other power play setup that the other unit for the power play was running, though, was a much more of like a traditional kind of triangle setup. And I thought this worked a lot better. That's more of like a triangle setup. This mainly being the triangle that you focus the puck in. And this is similar to what I was talking about a couple post games back, where I was talking about the Penguins power play that they've run for years with Sidney Crosby. Sidney Crosby plays along the goal line here. I was saying you could have Matty Beniers play there, and sure enough, that's where he was playing today. And then you have they had Berkey here, and then I believe it was Jaden Schwartz here for that unit. And you were seeing a lot of movement between these three players, and you're getting a lot of in close chances. You can have this player kind of sneaking up too, so if the Matty Beniers or whoever's playing along the goal line there can send some passes over into the slot, stuff like that. That's a better look, in my opinion, for the Kraken, certainly for that that power play unit. I get why they kind of have that adjusted or whatever you want to call it, umbrella something for the other unit, because you've got Bjorkstrand and you've got McCann who like to play up high. They like to kind of see the whole zone in front of them and then step up into shots. So I get what they're going for there, but it wasn't working in this game at all. Like they didn't seem to be on the same page. There wasn't a bunch of cohesion, and there wasn't player movement, right? Like even if you are going to go with that umbrella, you need moving screens or something, because you're talking about McCann or Bjorkstrand, whoever it is on either side, taking shots from 50 feet back, like you know what I mean? Or maybe that's an exaggeration, but 35 to 40 feet. These aren't grade A chances unless you're going to get guys screening in front, and they didn't really do that in this one. Those guys were kind of, the two down low players were pretty much locked into the two sides of the net, and so I thought that was kind of what was missing there for the power play in that regard for me for this one. And then look, on the penalty kill side of things, you just can't take so many penalties. I know the refs were kind of on everything. I mean, 11 total, power play opportunities for both these teams combined in this one, but you got to find a way to not, take penalties like the Vince Dunn one, right? Or Jaden Schwartz, right? Like just you. It's never been okay to hit a guy down low with your stick like that from behind. Like it's a no. Like, don't do it. He didn't need to do it. He just did it. Same thing with Vince Dunn. There was no reason to take that penalty against Ryan Hartman. He just got mad and he took it. And it's it's become a problem with Vince Dunn. It's a real problem. Him when he kind of loses his temper like that. Another super chat here from Burnt Creme. My negative self says that is the season. As you've said, Minnesota has easy schedule and they just outclassed the Kraken at home. Also, time to trade JT for Allison full time. Hashtag sell for prospects. Okay, so yeah, I mean, Minnesota's schedule is easy. There's no way around that. They're in a better spot than the Kraken are right now in the standings. I'll give you that. As we said on the deep dive, Kraken were one of 5 teams essentially fighting for one spot. It's not great odds. That's 20%, if everybody's about equal. And after a day like today where so many other teams won and the Kraken lost, including losing to one of those other teams, your odds, they get slightly even worse. Now the Kings, depending on how the Kings game against the Ducks go, the Kings have really just fallen, so they're kind of in this conversation now all of a sudden, right? I mean, the Wild and St. Louis are only 4 points back of the Kings in the first wild card spot. So it's possible that we're now seeing 6 teams vying for 2 spots instead of 5 going for 1. So that kind of helps everything, but still it's a rough spot to be in for the Kraken. They do need to start winning. I don't know that I'm willing to say it's the season. I'm still waiting through the end of this month. I think you got to wait and see how the Boston-Pittsburgh game go. They could easily win both of those games, and then, they're right back in it. I wouldn't really make a decision on anything until either the trade deadline on March 8th or just March 1st. But yes, they need to just figure it out. Like, what are you doing? Are you going? Are you good? Are you consistent? Can you win or can't you? Like, because that's where we're at. They need to pick a direction here, and they kind of need to just kind of stick to it if you want to end up in a good spot, whether it's the playoffs or in a position where you could get the most back for your assets. It's just the way it is. But thank you for the super chat, Burnt Creme. Thank you everybody for the super chats. Hopping over into the chats. I mean, Brooke Borgie fight. Yes, we did get the Will Borgen fight. Good on Borgen for taking that fight. I'm assuming that's in response to the hit he laid out against Joel Eriksson Ek. Sending him into the board. So, good on Will Borgen for, answering the bell there. It is the code. B, the game to game inconsistency of this team needs to be studied. It's truly remarkable. I've never seen a team just look so dominant to just so not back to back like this. It really, really doesn't make sense to me. I just don't understand it at all. I'm trying to think of reasons why that should be, and I can't. Right? Like there is no good explanation for that. Like just to be for a whole group of people. It's one thing for an individual, right? To be just off on some days or to be inconsistent that way, but for a whole group of 20 something 20 something guys to all just kind of be on or off as a collective is very strange. That doesn't happen often. It really, really doesn't. And it's a far cry from the streaky team that we were used to seeing earlier in the season, which is also strange how fast they lost that. Schultz tarnished the Winter Classic sweaters. I know, I was so pumped for the Winter Classic sweaters. You could tell everybody at Climate Pledge was pumped for the Winter Classic sweaters. Oh, and then this performance. Oh, all the magic was used up at the Winter Classic, I guess. Maybe that's just what it is. Byron, this team cannot handle actual pressure, and it's incredibly frustrating. I mean, it could be the pressure, right? Like you walk into that Vancouver game, nobody's giving you the chance to win, and you go out there and you take advantage of it. That absolutely could be the case. And then in this game, it's a big deal. It's a 4-point game essentially, and they just dropped the ball. I think you're onto something there. I hadn't personally considered that, but it's certainly something. We will see as they get closer to the trade deadline, as as they know the front office is going to need to make decisions. We'll see how that affects them. Habak, it's concerning to see them go from such a good game to this. I feel hopeless. It certainly puts us in a situation where we have to feel pretty powerless, right? Like as fans, it gets very hard as our emotions just go up and down, and we have to ride this roller coaster. It's incredibly difficult when again you see that inconsistency, and there is no kind of reason for it, right? Everybody's healthy. It's not like something changed there. It's just that they are inconsistent with their focus, with their game plan. At times this season, it's been effort level. I don't really feel like that was the case tonight, though. Yeah, it is an interesting one for sure. Let's see some more people expressing some confusion at all of that. I don't blame everybody. Fusion Mix, we went from 2 struggling teams to one that's been hot. I think you're onto something there, Fusion Mix. I mean, Vancouver was certainly struggling. They're kind of taking their foot off the gas. They've banked just a million points on everybody else so far this season. And yeah, they've been struggling for sure. Minnesota's been hot. I mean, they go to 7-2-1 now in their last 10. We talked about this on the deep dive last week, back on Monday. Minnesota's just on a tear right now. Like they had kind of fallen out. People were writing them off. They're right back in it now, 2 points back out of a wild card spot. So it could be that. Again, it doesn't really give an excuse for the inconsistency in, say, the defending or the discipline or goaltending or whatever it is for the Kraken special teams play. It doesn't really excuse that for the Kraken, because I think that's something you could point at and just say, like, clearly there was a difference from last game to this one, and it wasn't the other team, right? Like there's an element of that, but I think a lot of it is just like, again, nobody was moving on the power play. They moved last game. I don't know that that's really on the, I don't think the Wild were doing something special to keep the Kraken from moving while the Kraken were on the power play. But yes, the momentum coming in, I mean, it certainly affects things like when Vince Dunn scores the very first goal, minute whatever into this game, and the Wild just seemed unfazed by it. and they're able to come back and they can start outworking you, that is the kind of stuff that, yes, a team that is on, a good streak they have that confidence. They can shake things off a lot easier because they've been winning and they're riding that high. Those are the kind of things that gives you. And so maybe we saw that play in a little bit tonight. Julia, well, that was extremely demoralizing to watch, but at least they had some fight in them. Yeah, I mean, they stood up for each other. Again, if you go back to the first couple months of this season, that was the big question with us and this team. Was it felt like they were pushed around a lot, and I think a lot of guys tonight sent the message that they're not going to be pushed around. So that is some extreme growth, really, from how it was at the beginning of the year. I mean, it was pretty like stark how much they were getting pushed around at the beginning of the year, and that has not been the case recently. And Minnesota tried to do it tonight. The Kraken weren't having any of it. So I mean, there is definitely that. Nicole, maybe playoffs should be scrapped this season if we can't beat other wild card teams. If you can't beat other wildcard teams, it's going to be very, very, very difficult to make the postseason. You need the games like this one. I mean, maybe we'll come down last game of the season against the Minnesota Wild. Maybe we could put ourselves in that situation. But yeah, I'm with you. I think we're all there. Lindsay, well, that was fun for the first 36 seconds, wasn't it? Let's just remember that. The game ended 36 seconds in, right? That's how it works. Let's see. Big ooh from Patrick. I know. Went to Queen Anne Beer Hall to watch, but I'd give up the halfway point. I know. It's a rough game, I'm sure, to be out for this one. Let's see. Fusion Mix. If Eriksson Ek is out for more than a handful of games, that probably means the Wild aren't making it either. He is a big part of what they do. I mean, their center depth can be an issue for the Wild. I'm with you. If he does miss time, that will greatly impact them. But again, I mean, Calgary won tonight. Nashville won tonight. It's more than just the Wild, unfortunately, in the race that the Kraken have to worry about and watch on the out of town scoreboards. Let's not have too much silly talk about never wearing those beautiful sweaters again, please. From Sean. Agreed. I want them to wear them again. I really, really do. I really, really do. Let's see. Riley, I personally still thought they played good. Tough one for Joey, but he's been so good. So whatever, bound to happen. He blocked a lot of shots. It got lucky. More didn't go in. Yeah, I mean, the Kraken through a lot of this game still had fight. I'd say really this is the third period where maybe it wasn't as much there, which it happens. 5-1 game, right? Going into the third period, it happens. So I'm with you there. Tough one for Joey. It's kind of been a tough last couple for Joey, and I am wondering if the heavy workload that he had for just week after week after week is kind of catching up to him, because it's starting to look like it did. I mean, there was some couple of these goals were like, I don't feel like Joey a couple weeks ago would let that one in, right? Like they were just kind of sneaking under his arm, stuff like that. Yeah. So I would say that. I think it's time to kind of give Guru a little while. You know what I mean? Like let him kind of run. He's looked good in the last couple games that he's gotten into, and so I think we're probably going to see Guru from here on out. Maybe that's probably what I would do. Just saying, Fusion Mix, Joey was due for another half of the Martin Jones hot backup goalie prophecy to kick in. Yeah, that we might be there. I don't think it will be as bad as Martin Jones, but I do think we're kind of getting there. He needs some time on the bench. He needs some time to rest up. He played a lot of hockey. He did a fantastic job. Again, this takes nothing away from the incredible stretch Joey had, but he played a lot of hockey at a tough position. He needs some rest, I think. I will enjoy whatever watchable hockey they play this year, but they aren't a playoff team, and I'm not convinced they can be a contender in the next few years. From Via Ren, it's going to be tough. I think we'll have to see what they can pull off in this offseason. I know the early, looking ahead to the offseason isn't great as far as who's available, who they could bring in, like a star player, a really dynamic guy up front to could really kind of bring some consistent scoring. I just think, I mean, they're going to have to, though, like, right. Like just business wise is going to dictate that they're going to have to try. And who knows, Shane Wright can still be that player. Like Shane Wright comes in and he's a 25 goal scorer next year. That's a big difference for this team, right? That's a lot of offense and goal scoring and a guy that defenses have to pay attention to that can open up space for somebody else and all of that kind of stuff. That'd be a big difference, having that production, kind of second in line, versus what the Kraken get this year. So there's still hope in the form of Shane Wright, because I do think that he can do that. He can come in and be a very good player. Will it happen next year? I don't know. First full season in the NHL could happen at times next year. Rookies always hit a rookie wall. They always go through a month or two of struggle. But I think Shane Wright could be that thing. He's at least their best. Looking at everything right now, he's their best hope for that. B, at least Canner's point streak continues. Trying to find a bright spot is hard, but I will try. Again, there's still a couple bright spots. But yes, I see where you're coming from, B. I really do. Ricky sell every UFA, maybe a few extra as well. I mean, you'd have to, if you go beyond the UFAs, you're committing to really a long-term rebuild, and I don't see the team or the front office doing that. Whether that's in their best interest is a different discussion. You could certainly argue that it is, but I just don't. It's just not going to happen. It's not going to happen, and I don't really know how much of the UFAs are going to be moved on from either. It's sounding like they're working on an extension with Eberle, so you got to take Eberle off the table. So then it's just really Wenberg and Schwartz, not Schwartz, Schultz. Excuse me. One day I will stop confusing them, and it'll be the day that one of them leaves, probably. Let's see. Julia, I love Flower, but some of those saves, oh, man, Flowers. He gets us every year. Doesn't matter what team Flowers on. He gets us every year. Every year we got to go up against Marc-Andre Fleury. Every year he gets us. Gregory, we don't match up well against the Wild. We don't. I mean, they're a big, strong, physical team. They can get under our skin clearly. Their blue line's pretty banged up, but it's still a big, physical, strong blue line. And you could tell that they were able to kind of keep a lot of the smaller Kraken forwards to the outside. We weren't able to get as many screens on Flower as we were able to get, say against Thatcher Demko. And I do, the credit for that goes to the Minnesota blue line. They are big. They are physical. They know how to just lean on you enough that they can give their goaltender a sight line. Sometimes it's just as simple as that. It's just winning that straight up strength battle. And, the Kraken forwards, we don't have a net front presence guy. Our net front presence guys aren't always the biggest guys. You're talking about like Matty Beniers going for moving screens, not the biggest guy. We've talked about that several times this year. Jaden Schwartz, not the biggest guy. I mean, we saw him next to Middleton. I mean, that was right. Like it was pretty big difference there. And Yanni Gord for that line. I mean, not the biggest guy out there. So that is certainly a matchup problem. You are right, Gregory. The Kraken are hot 1 second, cold the next. Us poor Kraken fans getting whiplash, lull, and sleepless nights from Elizabeth. Oh yes, I'm sure. Oh, it's got to be rough there. I wish I had an answer. I wish I had something to even like kind of go down a thread that I could follow for the inconsistency, because I know that, I mean, it's just what everyone is talking about, and it's inexplicable. I don't know. I without being in the room when media is not normally allowed in the room, I don't know what to call it. I think a lot of it just comes back around the focus. It's just focus. It's effort. It's just being ready to play, whatever it is you want to call it. Discipline, right? Mental focus. It's all in that kind of same realm. And that's where we're seeing the inconsistency. It's really just the only thing I can think of, but I'm sorry I'm not able to like give you something more than that from an analysis standpoint. Let's see. That was a must win. That was just really bad from Sean. Agreed. Aaron, I'm really close to being on the seller side of things at the trade deadline. Again, if the next game, it's a repeat. Pittsburgh game, it's a repeat. It has to be, right? Like there's just no way around that. Jenna, didn't we get Berkey specifically to score goals? Yeah, I mean, to score goals or at least bring offense. He's also known as a really good distributor. We see his passes. He attempts passes. Other guys don't always. But yes, I mean, he was the big offseason addition year ago. I know the inconsistency with him being healthy. It's rough on a player. It really is. I've defended him. He's played well, but yes, at some point you just need the production. Similar to the way we talk with Matty Beniers, right? Matty Beniers playing fantastic in the defensive zone, but at some point you just need the offensive production. It has to be there, and I do think Berkey's at that point too, where it's look, you're playing well, you're back into the top six. He's getting the minutes, he's getting the power play looks. At some point, he's just got to start producing. But yeah, I mean, he's just not alone on this team. There's a lot of those guys. Good on Ebbs for finally starting to produce, though, right? Like Eberle is back on board doing that kind of stuff. So happy about that. Fusion Mix Berkey's had so many setbacks. I think his rhythm is shot. If he can stay healthy, I think he'll be good next year. Hopefully, yeah, full off season, you come back in. You're able to be healthy. It certainly will help him a lot. It's just better for everybody. But at some point he just needs to get going this year if possible. Edward, Kraken played Pokemon with the penalties. Got to catch them all. Ain't that right? I mean, maybe they got like a bingo card in the back to see how many penalties they can take, how many different penalties they can take, and they just went for that. This one, I mean, there was so many penalties. Sam, in our Sacred Winter Classic jerseys, those monsters. Also, why the heck does Marc-Andre Fleury have our number every time? If he was still on Vegas, our record would be even worse against them. At least Furcus got 100 points. Yeah, I mean, Furcus Circus is on fire, but I'm with you. Yes, Christian, we beat Flower in a shootout in the first year. Since then, man, just on us year after year after year. Flower, he's just absolutely got our number. You're right. It's just crazy. Coop, what I cannot wrap my head around is why on this team, when one guy finally heats up, the others that are producing go ice cold at the exact same time. It's like a 1-on-1, one in, one out nightclub. It's crazy. I'm with you. It's just inconsistency. Everything about this team is just inconsistent. They somehow, after being the most consistent team, in the sense that you knew when they were on a losing streak, it was going to be a while. When they were on a winning streak, it was going to be a while. But it's just all inconsistent. It makes no sense. I mean, the Yanni Gord line was the best line for the team earlier in the year. They've disappeared completely. Like, when was the last time you really noticed that line? Been several games for me, and I've been looking, even just to see if they've been deployed defensively, and maybe that's the reason or something like that. But no, they're just playing like low event hockey. Like, they're just not doing anything. So like I just don't get it. The first line's at least going right now. Ebbs is getting goals. McCann's got that point streak. Like, there's something, but yeah, I'm with you. Just come on. Jessica with the super chat, thank you very much. On the plus side, a Minnesota fan gave us beer they smuggled into the arena. That's all I've got. That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Free beer, I would argue that's pretty good if that's all you got. It certainly makes the night worth doing there at the game. So I hope it was good. Hope you still had an okay time at the game. Let's see. Sam, Schwartz's penalty was straight out of the Shoresy playbook. Very useful in the no-show. Not so much for the NHL. Yes, no, you can't be doing that. On to Onslaught. This is do or die time. This team looks like 500 hockey is its best. For us to make the playoffs, we have to catch the team that just went back to back and beat Edmonton and stomped us. I mean, you've got to catch them. You got to catch the Predators. You got to outplay the Flames and the Blues as well. Like, it's a lot. And I'm with you. They're playing like 500 hockey right now, back and forth, up and down. It's not going to cut it. It just will not cut it at all. Kylie, well, tonight couldn't have gone much worse. I feel that was the deciding game for making the playoffs for me. Minnesota plays St. Louis and Nashville next week, and we are 4 regulation wins off of the nearest team. I mean, at least they have to kind of play each other. Knock on wood. I don't steal the RJ magic, but means there's going to be some dropped points for some of those teams in that, just because there has to be. But yeah, it's the Kraken need to figure it out is the bottom line. Like, if the Kraken aren't going to play well, it doesn't even matter what everybody else is doing. Because if you're playing 500 or worse, you're not going anyway. Imagine it goes down to the wire in the last game of the season for the last wildcard spot between the Kraken and Wild. At this point, we could only hope for that. I'm telling you, that's what I was saying. Like, back on last Monday, I would take that. You gave me that, and then it became 50-50 odds instead of 20% or whatever it's going to be. I would have absolutely done that. I would have, for sure. I would have taken that 50-50 shot for sure. Gabrielle, is this just a one-off bad game for Joey, or do you think that we'll see a switch to Grew after tonight's performance? Kind of talked about it already, but I think we're going to see Grubauer moving forward here. I just think Joey played a lot of hockey. He played a ton of hockey. Isn't that right, RJ? Joey, I mean, he held down the fort when he needed to. He was fantastic. He did everything he could, but it does look like it's catching up to him.
Yeah, it really does. I mean, this is the first time he's been yanked in his 51 career starts. I tweeted that earlier in the game. He hasn't really had a game like this before. And so, the challenge is on him to kind of be able to bounce back from that. But I do think it would help getting a little bit more rest. We've talked about burnout with Joey starting, 25 or 29 games or whatever it was. And it does seem like it's catching up to him. So Hakstol did talk about that after the game a little bit. He said, honestly, and I think he was very, candid and honest in this media availability. I want to talk to you about it. He said, honestly, he kind of had that instinct to goal earlier to maybe pull Joey. But he said he's had such a great season for us. I left him in there. And, then, of course, after the fourth one, he did what he did. But he said, he wasn't the problem. He said, just like everybody this game, he, just didn't have the best game.
Yeah. And I mean, the inconsistency, RJ, right? Like that's all we've been able to talk about. And there's not really an answer for it, but just everything. They did everything right. The defensive issues disappeared last game. The decor was very focused and they were able to handle their business. You had the power play, the two new kind of looks for each unit played well. There was player movement in this game. They had the new look. They had the new setup, right? The one had that like awkward umbrella thing. The other one kind of going with the triangle down towards the corner. But there was no player movement and there was nothing special about it. And it was very easy for the Wild to shut down. The discipline level of focus in this one, not there for the Kraken. I mean, just up and down the board, just all of it just dropped off after that Vancouver game. And we're all just asking why.
Right. And I think, honestly, Dave Hakstol's kind of had enough of that. And in this media availability, more than previous ones, I think he was stern, he was candid, and he was honest. And he talked about what he did not like with the effort from the team tonight. He said, I don't think we should be frustrated, because he got the first question about whether they should be, are frustrated or not. I don't think we should be frustrated. I think we should be pretty upset with ourselves, because there were a bunch of moments in this game where we did not meet the moment. And he talked about, number one, the discipline, the penalties that they took. He basically just ran down the list of all the penalties they took that he didn't like that they took, the moments that they put the Wild in. And he said, this is a team that's 30+% on the power play over the last dozen games. That is a dangerous power play, and especially the stick penalties. He really didn't like the stick penalties, whether it was the high sticking, the kind of nut shot tripping, all that stuff he did not like. And I don't blame him. I mean, that's the number one culprit for me in this game is those unnecessary penalties. Because at 5-on-5, the Kraken were actually not bad in this one. But gosh, there was only 38 minutes of 5-on-5 in this game. They just couldn't establish a rhythm. I mean, that's what Yanni Gourde was talking about. He said, it's just so hard when you can't get into a rhythm shift after shift because all these penalties.
Right. And I know I'm looking at like the total ice time 5-on-5, for, top line, time on ice wise was the Wenberg line with only 6:41. So not a ton of time on ice there for them.
And Dylan, I don't know if people brought up, but the building really turned on the refs in this one. This is the angriest I have seen the Climate Pledge crowd at the refs. Honestly, I just don't get it in this one. Look through all the Kraken penalties, and there's not a single one I can really dispute. If you go down the list, it's all either automatic high sticking, or it's the nut shot from Schwartz, which is definitely a penalty, or it's ones where they got both guys for cross checking whatever, but they pulled both. I know they missed the McCann hit, and that was definitely missed, but other than that, I don't really know what everyone was seeing. I'm sorry to kind of disagree with everybody in the building, but I just don't get it.
I haven't seen too much of that here. Everybody's
that makes sense to me, actually.
And also, I mean, Kraken had 5 power plays. You got your chances too. This was a game where the refs were calling everything. Anything they saw, they called. That was the name of the game in this one. They were at least consistent there. And the power plays just did nothing. Daniel, it kind of seems like this organization is great at scouting prospects and draft picks, but not so great at scouting free agents and pro players. We were having the longer conversation about a lot of the players that have been brought in. Obviously Andre Burakovsky is the name that gets thrown around a lot. Just looking for anybody really to step up right now, RJ, because again, speaking of inconsistency, McCann and Ebbs are playing great right now, but it means everybody else has disappeared. I mean, I brought up the Yanni Gourde line. Where have they been for 5 games now?
The last few games, really. Yeah, it's been a few games. I mean, the one guy who I do think has stepped up and just isn't being rewarded is Andre Burakovsky. I thought he looked excellent tonight and has been for the last few games. He just cannot get a puck to go in the net, though.
Yeah, but also he needs to shake it up, right? Like if we're gonna be critical of Matty Beniers for always going for the same shot and always trying to pick the same spot against a goaltender, Berkey always tries to shoot from the exact same spot too. And it's not working right now. Like Berkey needs to at some point shift it up because I'm with you. I defended him for a long time now. I think he's a good player. I think his passing gets overlooked a lot. But at some point, like just like we talk about with Matty, the points need to come. That's it just needs to happen if the team is
needs
going
it, yeah.
to be in the conversation. And just after a night like tonight where all but one of the teams that you're in this race with is going to walk away with at least 1 point, and I say that just because LA is kind of now in the conversation, but they're going to overtime, so everybody but St. Louis is going to get at least 1 point. Everybody else got 2 already, we know about. Kraken need more than this. They just do.
Right. I mean, that's just the reality of this wild card race. You cannot give up points. They're not in a position where they can do that. And every night that they don't bring their full effort, this is what can happen. What are they going to be 5 points out now by the end of tonight?
Yeah. Let's see. Yes, you're 5 points out from the second wild card spot. It seems like
tough.
A big gap when you're talking about 5 other teams being involved.
Yep.
It is. So there's been lots of conversation also in chat about things long term, whether it's selling at the deadline now or just looking ahead to the offseason, what kind of players they could potentially bring in. There's not a lot of great free agents. We know that about this class. There's Jake Gensel. I've seen his name several times in here. There's not even a ton of obvious trade candidates or targets, RJ, either, which makes this hard. So people were talking about like any way forward. And I said, well, Shane Wright could be the way forward because of the offense he could bring, which is where then this comment's coming from Sean Dillon. I'm slightly concerned about you saying that Shane is our only hope for offense next year. Do you really not think Ron does anything to get a legit threat on the market? I think he's going to try, but I just think when you're talking about there being like 2 guys in free agency and nobody obviously like dissatisfied in their current situation or a team needing to turn things around and sell off a guy in his prime while they start a rebuild, I don't know what he's like. He can't make something happen out of nowhere. And this is just, it's the worst possible timing for the Kraken, is that they need somebody really desperately. And it's this particular offseason that they have that, big need.
Right. The options are going to be limited, and trying to pry someone one away from a team just isn't in Ron Francis's nature either. It's not something he's really done in the past. I don't think it's the kind of thing he likes to do. He'll try, but who knows? I mean, the fact that there's so much rumblings around re-signing Eberle at this point kind of leads me to believe they realize what the situation is.
Right. Like, yeah. Oh, we talked about that too earlier. Because I mean, it's kind of crazy, RJ, for a guy who keeps saying he doesn't want to leave. He's sure heating up at the time that if you were a trade target, you would want to heat up at. I'm just saying.
Right, but if you heat up and it leads to wins, that makes you less likely to leave.
Yeah, and it does about 50% of the time with this team. For anybody.
About.
Super chat here from Riley. We're so lucky the bottom half of the West is so mid this season, and we squander it every opportunity we have to take a step in the standings. That has really been the story of the season here, right? The games that you kind of are supposed to win or you have to win, it feels like, RJ, are the games that they drop. And every time they step up, whether it's against Vancouver, it's a Winter Classic against Vegas or whatever, Boston in Boston, like they do every year. It's just like it's like it doesn't matter right away, just like
right.
tonight.
Yeah, I mean that kind of thing can work for you in the playoffs where you get up for big games, but in the regular season, I mean, it's a long schedule. There's 82 games, and really, it's the teams that can just take care of business when they need to, that can win those important games. Maybe not against the best teams in the league, but against the teams that you need to beat, and at the times you need to beat them. And the Kraken just don't seem to have that in their DNA right now.
They haven't had it all season either, right? I mean, that's why they're sitting here with 11 OTLs,
Yeah.
And the next most for these teams that they're in there with would be Minnesota with 6. They're 3 back in regulation wins from the next closest teams. Like it is a struggle for them, and it's just been a struggle this whole time. Just even more conversations about like what this team's window is. Realistically, RJ, if they're not able to do something this offseason, like what does that even mean? Like, I mean, people are talking about just really stripping it down, trading beyond just the UFAs.
Yeah, I mean, I think the real window is going to be led by your draft picks, players that the Kraken have drafted and developed. And aside from Beniers, Wright, and Evans, they're just not here yet. And I think the Kraken draft really well. They've got a good farm system, but that's just going to take time to come into being. And then that's kind of past the core of what you have. You know, the Eberles, the Gourds, the Schwartzes, you know, all the guys that were really driving the bus to start. You know, heck, Adam Larson, Jamie Alexiak.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you're gonna start to age out of those guys, and you know you're going to have to make decisions on them one by one as far as what you want to do with them. I think you still have some time if you can bring in a star very soon, but like we said, who's out there?
Again, you got to convince the
I mean, this is
Islanders.
armchair GM
I know
stream stuff. No, I'm not saying we shouldn't talk about it here. I'm just saying, like,
right.
you know, you
I was
could
gonna
go into
say,
a lot of depth about it.
yes, you could. I'm still on Barzal. Like, you got to somehow convince him that he
Yeah.
needs to be fed up with the Islanders and he wants to move. That's, I think, your best case scenario. But yeah, I mean, and then, you know, to get on the prospect side of things, right? By the way, everybody check out the Patreon if you want RJ's upcoming Armchair GM stream on the 28th, where he'll be talking about the Kraken right before the deadline. Or if you want to check out the VOD from the prospect chat I did earlier last week, where I talk about several of the prospects and breakdown video with them. Patreon description in the link below. But like Varen was talking earlier, and I agree with this. So many of the prospects the Kraken have are really just replacements that are going to just be ELC replacement guys that are going to be middle to bottom six guys, right? Like they're still just long term going to need somebody. If Maddie's never going to figure it out offensively and just be a defensive guy, if Shane, you know, we'll see what he turns into, but even still, you're going to need another person, another piece who can be that dynamic, consistent offensive player. You're still just going to need to find that from outside the organization, like where they're at right now. It doesn't exist internally beyond Shane Wright.
Right. I'm with you on that. I mean, I guess the good news is the cap space doesn't go away unless you sign guys to long-term deals, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, as much as it would suck to have another season of kind of being mid like this, you know, maybe that's what you have to do, and just, you know, wait until somebody becomes available, whether it's in the middle of the your next season or, you know, whenever that is that you can kind of strike. But unless you sign guys to term and money, you know, that cap space is still going to remain.
Right. Well, and then it becomes, you know, why be mid? Why not just be bad? Right. Like it benefits you.
Yeah.
You trade off anybody who has value, get as many assets as possible, get as high a draft pick as possible, because then you might have somebody internally within the system who could become that player or something like that. Right. Like it's a very slippery slope. And it's one that I know the team won't do, and certainly the front office can't afford to, because they'd be out of jobs.
Yeah.
Like
External factors.
that's the
Exactly.
way this works. But like that's how fast you get down that rabbit hole. You get there very quickly when you start going down it. Habak, that Dunn penalty stands out. So tired of his angry man penalties. I texted you something similar too.
Yep, you did, and I completely agree with you. I mean, it just has to stop. I mean, it seemed like on that play, he was playing really well. They had the 4-on-4 going. He made a nice move to open up a shooting lane, hits the post, and at that point, it just seemed like he was just like, you know, screw it. I'm done. I'm gonna, well, no pun intended. You know, I'm done. I'm just gonna take out my anger on the nearest player I see, and it just has to stop. It has to stop.
Yeah, I don't know why it's still happening, to be perfectly honest. Like
He had a good run going, though. It seemed like he finally learned his lesson after that overtime debacle.
Yeah.
But
yeah, there's still more just conversation about like who's untouchable and all that kind of stuff on the team right now from everybody.
Yeah, and I saw also questions about that too. Anyway, I just thought it'd be good to mention. You probably already have, but that we're doing a mailbag for the next deep dive podcast where we'll get into some of these things as well. So hit up our social media, ask those questions that maybe take a little bit more time to dive into.
Yeah, exactly. Coop, I would be very hesitant to disrupt the Lars Dunn pairing, considering that's basically what we hang our hat on. I'm kind of there. I think you might as well, right? Like this is do or die time of the season, and sticking with things and trying to be consistent has only yielded inconsistent results. So you might as well try to go inconsistent and see if you stumble on something. That's how we ended up with this Yanni Gord line. It was just line blender, and all of a sudden you found something. I think, Adam Larson has struggled this year. Vince Dunn has struggled in different ways. Larson struggled in coverage. Dunn has struggled in discipline issues. I think the Alexiak Borgen pairing has been rough for a while now. I think you could shake that up. I think you could bring in Riker Evans, sit Justin Schultz. Like, this is what I would do anyway, and then really shake things up. I mean, I consider a Riker Dunn pairing, like, just go for it, like a YOLO defensive pairing where it's just
That would
offense.
be the YOLO pairing.
Yeah. But like, what do you have to lose? You're 5 points back. You're not going to have any tiebreakers, and you can't score goals consistently at all.
Right. I mean, you need to spark something. I don't know that, like, say, Dunn Evans is necessarily the answer, but as far as changing the D pairs, why not? At least having Riker play. I mean, because he's been sitting for a while. And the thing is, I don't think Schultz has played poorly. Like, Dumoulin Schultz has been one of the best defensive pairs they've had. Like, the best really, that they've had.
It's literally the best in the league.
I hate to break that up. I mean, hey, like, maybe Evans in for like an Alexiak or Borgen, one of those. I know it's the kind of thing that would never happen because you don't want to like do that to a vet, and that's just kind of how it works. But like, I'd seriously consider that at this point, just for a game.
Yeah, like I said, you have nothing to lose, right? Like, you're now last of all of the teams vying for a wild card spot, right? You're tied with Calgary for the least amount of points, and you're not going to have the tiebreaker on even them. So you have nothing to lose.
I'd like to send a message for the penalties, right? For somebody by scratching somebody, but it's Dunn and Larson. Like, those are the guys, and you can't scratch them.
It's so frustrating. But you can demote one, essentially, right? Like, you could take Vince Dunn off the power play, something like that, to send a message.
Yeah, you better play Riker at that point.
Yes. Yeah. Well, yes, you would have Riker Evans in, but I'm just saying, like, you could do something like that. Like, why not get extreme? You sit Borgen for a game, bring in Riker Evans, and then you have Schultz Evans as the 2 power play guys.
That'd be bold.
It'd be bold. They need bold right now. They need something.
Not to try and lead between the lines too much, but it really did feel after this game like Hakstol was kind of, done with their, what. He was, again, just more stern than he has been. Like, anyone go back and watch whatever video clip they do post of this, but like, his tone was different than even in some of the bad losses after this season.
Yeah. I think Nicole's kind of hitting on this too, right? Like, this is the other aspect of it. It's really easy to do the armchair GM thing, but then, like, the realities become, as Nicole says here, you can't trade away more than half the team and expect anything enjoyable to watch for the next 3+ years. You move this year's UFAs, and that's it. And therein lies the problem. That's why the team won't do it. That's certainly why the front office won't do it. And they're not going to see the other side of that rebuild. No front office would. But yes, it's the fact that, like, the team is not, it would be really bad hockey. Like, it's brutal when this happens, unless you have
should remember from year one.
Yeah. Like, it's really tough. Like, it's hard to watch. It's hard on everybody. A lot of the casual stuff goes away. It makes a big impact, like, on us, on the media side of things, the amount of interest in the team. I mean, it's really, really tough. And I know we talk a lot about the season ticket side of thing for the Kraken and that sort of business angle for them, and that being a reason why they can't. Also, if you're talking about a full rebuild that's going to take 3 or 4 years, who knows if the NBA comes into town by then, right? Like, the Kraken will. Right. Kraken can't afford to have the Sonics come back and they're in the middle of a rebuild and their team is, 3rd worst in the league again. It's
going to be ugly. The building will be empty.
Bad. Yeah, it would be really bad. So it's just it's the one thing I feel very certain in saying cannot happen and will not happen.
If the team has been around for a decade, I'd be all for it, but it's just not the case.
Yeah. All right. Seeing the Kings won. So everybody but the Blues tonight got 2 points.
Yeah. Oh, again, the Kraken aren't catching the Kings. We should accept that right now.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's see. Absurdly saying this is only the 3rd year this team has existed, folks. It's way too early to be talking about long-term mediocrity. I agree. Yeah. I agree with that. I do agree with that. And again, we have yet to see a lot of the stuff that they have been banking on as part of their longer term strategies for the front office kind of come to fruition. And that very much, like I said earlier, a lot of that comes down to Shane Wright. A lot of that comes down to Riker Evans playing consistently. I mean, like, these are their high draft picks. They've got like 8 second round picks waiting to come in as well. Like you got to count on at least one of those guys showing up in some sort of significant way. So it's just a crapshoot as to who it would be. So like there is a lot of time there. But I also understand, like, if you've been a Mariners fan, it'd be very easy to
Yeah.
fall into that with this team. There's a lot of echoes and parallels in a way that I wish there wasn't.
Yeah, let's not talk about it.
Oh man, let's see. Um, let's see. A couple more years like this, and we'll be Ron Francis making these decisions. If you can't make one now, I mean, that's just the way it goes for everybody. Let's see. I mean, it's so much of this kind of talk. Like it's really just all that's in chat here. I mean, was there anything else? Did the players have anything to say for this one? Like, which players did you get, RJ?
Yeah, I mean, so we got Yanni Gourde and we got Vince Dunn. And they were pretty honest about things too as well. I mean, Gourde, talked about the penalties and not being able to establish momentum. He talked about being frustrated that they just can't seem to string multiple games together where they play really well. And Vince Dunn too. I mean, you could tell he was kind of searching for answers after this one, and he said, I'm trying to remember like how exactly he worded it. If you can give me a sec.
Okay.
You know what? I'm not going to remember because it feels like so long ago. We got the two players; they were really fast. We waited a long time for Hakstol, and then the takeaways from Hakstol are just seared into my brain.
Yeah,
but
that's
yeah,
fine.
I mean, Dunn was, he didn't really talk about the discipline issues too much. He more talked about just kind of playing consistently. And I mean, yeah, I can't remember that
Okay.
what he said. I'll go back and find it after this. I'm sorry,
Yeah.
Dylan.
Yeah.
Sorry, everybody.
Here's a hypothetical question, though, from Sam. Isn't a common sign for general managers on the hot seat involving them doing bold but risky big push that winds up screwing the team's future and they get fired anyways? Yes. So I guess in that respect, we know Ron Francis doesn't feel too much pressure on his job because he hasn't done some just crazy deal that you look at and you're just like, why?
Yeah. Well, we'll wait till July.
Yeah. That's off-season deals are fine. It's the mid-year trade deadline. You pay some exorbitant price for one defenseman, and it's just like, yeah, no, that's not gonna fix these problems, and you've just compounded things for later. Let's see. Riley, what concerns me is kids getting drafted aren't built like they used to be. They take much more time now to mature and be NHL ready. We do have a great farm system and draft pool, but how long until they're ready to produce? I'm going to disagree with that, Riley. More guys than ever are NHL ready now to play. I know they might not be physically mature and ready to go in that respect, but more guys we are seeing step into the NHL, their draft, D+1 year or D+2 year and make massive, big, immediate impacts. You could just look all around the NHL for the last couple of years. So I just think it's one of those things where with the Kraken specifically, they haven't necessarily gone out and targeted those guys with their couple high draft picks, right? Like Matty Beniers needed to stay another year in college, but he came in at the end of that year, played 10 games. That's first season after he was drafted. Shane Wright, we kind of know the story. And again, if the Kraken were not an expansion team, Shane Wright plays all of last year. Like Shane Wright's been a Kraken this whole time. If he's on any other organization that doesn't have just a log jam of way too many people in it, the way the Kraken do because they're an expansion team. And then the rest of it for the Kraken is just because they're all second round picks. Like they never play right away anyway. But I do think that we are in an era where whether you're coming from the national program with Team USA, whether you're coming out of Major Junior or you're coming out of the NCAA, where we're seeing more and more draft eligible players playing in than ever before. Guys are playing elite level hockey and they have the skill, they've had the coaching and all the extra, private tutors and skating lessons and all of that kind of stuff so that they are NHL ready at a much quicker pace than they ever have been before.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. I mean,
it just hasn't benefited us.
Right. That's true. You're the expert in that area, so I'll leave that to you.
Yeah, I know. Let's see. Sean, shake things up. This is the last opportunity for that. If they lose to the Bruins and Pens games, it's sell time. Yeah, I mean, do you think Francis waits until really right up on the trade deadline, or do you think if they drop the next two, that's when we would see a move if we're going to see one?
I mean, I know he likes to get ahead of the deadline, but in this situation, I feel like he wants every single game of data that he can get. before he makes a decision about what he wants to do. So I think we might even just see it up to the deadline.
Yeah. B, continuing to sit Riker when they're on this homestand just sucks. Send him back down if you really don't want him to play for some reason, but he needs to get games, AHL or NHL, he needs to play. It is getting confusing why he's not playing, RJ. The only thing I can think of, though, is if you want to show off Justin Schultz.
There's that, but also I think you look at how the team has handled guys in the past, like Will Borgen as an example, where they sat him for 20 games to start year one. I think he should play. I'm with you on this. We don't need to argue about it, but there is a value to being around Jay Leach and getting a lot of that one-on work in with him. I don't think it's something that can replace game reps, but if you're talking about playing in Coachella Valley, where he's kind of done all he can do at the AHL level.
No,
he's too good for that now.
He's way
whether
too good.
It's that, right, or whether it's working with a really good defensive coach in Jay Leach, who has helped guys progress in the past, it might not be as clear of a decision as it would seem on the surface. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, it's frustrating because he's playing better now than Borgen played year one. Right? Like Riker Evans playing better than that. And so he's just, yeah, I don't know.
If this is the case after the deadline, then it's a different conversation. But I think they're kind of biding their time until the deadline.
I know, it's just crazy. Like you stick him with Brian Dumoulin, and it's the best defensive pairing in the NHL, like the best.
Yes.
Like I don't know.
Right, but again, if you're able to move Schultz for a second, or maybe even something more than that, and then Evans goes in and plays the rest of the season, I just don't think you'll look back at this as an important time that he was missing.
I know. I agree with that. But it's it's at least not talking about what the team's going to look like 5 years from now, like the rest of
Fair enough.
Oh man, Fusion Mix. It would be a lot of fun if for the last few games of the season they call up a bunch of young guys. Probably can't happen since the Firebirds are doing well, but I'd love to see it. Agreed. I think if the Kraken are kind of down and out, there would be years in which you might see something like that. But with the Firebirds being atop of their division, you're not going to see that. They're going to keep as many guys there as possible. And what you might see is a Riker Evans go back down to Coachella Valley so that he could be a part of whatever playoff run the Firebirds have.
Yep. Yeah. If Kraken are out of it, Firebirds are in it. Firebirds are going to get priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And then that would be their version of the play the kids thing. I know, like Ricky, a lot. You bring that up. You're bringing it up again here. See what happens. How the heck does a third-year expansion team find itself rebuilding? I mean, they're not in a rebuild thing, right? Like they're not. They're essentially one piece away, and they're a playoff team.
Right. Well, I mean, although, look, if you look at what they did right after the expansion draft, they brought in a lot of veteran players. The Kraken are the 6th oldest team in the NHL right now. Mm-hmm. It sounds crazy, but, how is the third-year expansion team the 6th oldest team in the league? Because that's how they built it. They signed free agents. They kind of built an initial core out of those guys. That's how you're looking at that kind of stuff. But, it's just those draft picks taking time to mature.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Are there any guys from Finland in the free agency pool? With all those failed breakaways, the Kraken could really use some finish from Lindsay.
That's good. Tanev had another one today, and we were all it developed, we all just looked over at each other like, what a shame.
You know what, though? It was by far and away his best chance. Like he actually did pretty good on that one. He got some height on it. Like he went where Flower is weak. It was just Flower didn't drop into the butterfly, and that's what got him. Like who would have thought that, right? Key. But that's what happened. And if we're gonna bring it up, Alexiak technically missed on his opportunity too.
Yeah,
Alexiak's shorthanded breakaway opportunity, as we all expect. Let's see. Some more talk. Let's see. Power play coach feels like has changed nothing for 2 years from on Onslaught. Jessica, PK coach, should coach everything. All other coaches are losable. I started this off, RJ, with the whiteboard, talking about what the two different power play units are doing and why it kind of worked last game, and then this game it just wasn't there. As we were talking through chat and stuff, I think part of what the Kraken struggled with in this one was just not having size up front. It's a big blue line for the Minnesota Wild, and I just feel like they were never able to get a consistent screen on Flower because the Wild were just able to push them out of the way.
Yeah, and Yanni talked about this, actually. He said that the Wild boxed out really well, and that's one of the things that they did. Where the Kraken just kind of couldn't get to the net effectively, and it's frustrating to play against a team that's so good at boxing out. And of course, Yanni, he'll never make an excuse. He's like, we just got to do better. We got to, beat that physical play, right, and get to the front of the net. But that is something Minnesota did well. I mean, as for the power play too, Hakstol did say that he liked the team's power play late in the game. He liked the looks that they got. He liked how they operated, but he did not like their first power play. He said it was a really big opportunity for him in the game. Didn't like what they did on that first one, and it really cost them. It was one of those moments where they didn't meet the moment in this game.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree with that. Let's see here. Just trying to find some stuff. We're at the hour mark anyway. Sam, for the Firebirds, could they get extra reinforcements if AHL eligible prospects transition from their respective leagues for their playoff run? Imagine if they get Newman to come over. That is still very possible. That is something that can happen for them. I'll be interested in that, in the sense that I'm going to be interested in how many of them actually get in there and play, RJ. Right? Like Jagger Fergus comes over. Is he going to get in there this year? Goyette, is he going to get in there this year? Like stuff like that. It's going to be very, very fascinating to see who they work into in the playoffs. Because last year I thought they were kind of aggressive at working those guys into the playoff rotation.
They were, but it's got to be guys who can play more of a depth role than what they were doing in junior. Right? You're not going to get the top six. If you're Jagger Fergus, you're not going to be the first line winger or goal scoring kind of guy. It has to be somebody who's going to make sense in a bottom six role. And so you might see prospects who aren't the most flashy kind of fill those roles.
Yeah. No, it's going to be interesting for sure. I want to end on this, RJ. I don't know if Stratic asked it, but I'm going to ask it. Favorite goal?
Let's see. I mean, you got the Vince Dunn goal early in the game. That was
I think the goal that was scored, and then the goal that like somehow went in. Which one did you like more?
Yeah. I'll go with the first one. The boring answer.
Coward.
But yeah, that second one was okay. Call me a coward.
No, I know. No, I'm trying to find something here, RJ. That's all. After a rough, inconsistent game for the Kraken, I will take the Eberle goal though, just because like it shows that he's back, right? Like that's a goal scorer's goal. Throw it from behind the net with your back up against the wall, and it just bounces around and it goes in.
Yeah, off the defenseman. Though that's when things are going right for you. Maybe not the team, but for you.
Yes, but that's the kind of magic that a lot of the top guys just have, right? Like the Ovechkins of the world, the Bedards of the world. Like they just have that magic it factor. Lots of other guys have the shot, the release, all of it, but there's just some guys that those things just happen to, and I just kind of like when it happens.
And you know what? It takes something like that to be Marc-Andre Fleury. At least in this building, he is just lights out every game.
We talked about that. It's brutal. It's brutal every time he comes. It's awful, and especially because it's him. It's hard to hate him, but
yeah, you can't be mad. You got to be happy for him in some way, right? I mean, he's the guy you have to like. Just in the NHL, you gotta love him.
Yeah. Jake, how about McCann catching that broken stick? That was pretty fantastic, actually.
That was cool. One of the better moments in this one for the Kraken.
Yeah, that was good. All right, so thanks everybody for joining us. Thanks to those that gave super chats, and of course a big shout out and thanks to Flatstick Pub. Hopefully some people from the arena were able to go over to that South Lake Union location, take advantage of the $1 off beer after the rough game and everything tonight. Looking forward to again, trying to get another watch party set up with them. Would be a lot of fun to do that. We will see everybody for deep dive on Monday, as well as the Boston game on Monday. So we'll see which Kraken team we get, RJ.
Who knows?
Who knows?
It's Boston. I bet we get the good Kraken.
Yeah, but it's Boston in Seattle. So I feel like that just goes back onto the mystery wheel.
Yeah, well, it was a fun game last time. I mean, they didn't get the result, but I bet we're in for a heck of a hockey game, whoever wins.
Definitely. Should be a lot of fun. We'll see you all after that.